David T.C. Davies.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And I'm delighted to be able to rise today in full support of what the government are doing at the moment, and also, if I may, to put on record my support for every single word of the speech that the Home Secretary made at the recent Conservative Party conference. The government are absolutely right to be doing something to tackle the problem of illegal immigration. And nobody's got any problem with legal migration into Britain. Nobody on this side of the House has suggested that there is an issue with that. Myself, I'm married to somebody who's immigrated into this country from Eastern Europe. My children are bilingual, they have dual nationality. My sister-in-law is Chinese. You know, Davies family Christmas get-togethers can be like the United Nations. There's no issue about this. It's not about racism or xenophobia at all. What I think our concern is on this side is that migration needs to be managed in a careful fashion, and it needs to be legal and controlled, because illegal mass migration is causing all sorts of problems, not just incidentally for the rest of us in the UK, but also in many cases for some of those who have been illegally brought into this country. It puts pressure on housing, of course, and it's very important that we do take action against rogue landlords, because I remember going out with the police once in a part of London. I think it was Ealing actually, but it may have been somewhere else. It doesn't matter. It was a part of London where the police openly said, look at all these sheds that have been converted into accommodation. It's all for people who've come over here illegally, and it's such a widespread problem that very little is actually being done about it. Of course.
Actually, I represent a constituency in which such sheds frequently exist, and let me say the housing pressures in Slough are such that most of the residents of the sheds are now perfectly legal.
We don't know, do we? But we'll no doubt be able to find out, because we'll be giving people the powers to check. It causes pressure on schools. There is a cost when pupils go into a school and can't speak English. There is a cost for translators. It causes problems for the health service. It does undermine. I will give way in a moment. It does undermine wages, and it creates some wider public concerns. I'll give way, of course.
And on that point, and I'm very glad to hear the Honourable Gentleman mentioning that his children are bilingual, on the matter of language, English language courses, of course, are free. Would you not agree that surely the government should ensure that Welsh language courses, given that Welsh language has equal status under the 1993 Act, should also be free? They are not free as courses at present.
Well, diolch am hynny, and you're tempting me down another path. The reality is, actually, I'd love to come back to that on another occasion, because there is a lot of money wasted on translating documents into Welsh that nobody would ever read into English, and not quite enough money spent supporting people who want to learn the Welsh language. But that's a matter more for the Welsh Assembly than for us here today. I think there is a wider public concern about illegal immigration. It's too often dismissed as narrow-minded racism when it's not, in my view. I think it is reasonable for people who live in established communities to get nervous when they suddenly find that English, or indeed in some parts of North Wales, Welsh, is no longer the language that they're hearing day to day on the streets. And in some of the larger cities, people have become nervous when they see changes going on, cultural changes that they can't necessarily go along with. Women wearing burqas or trailing 6 feet behind their husbands, for example, or issues such as female genital mutilation or forced marriage. And it's no good dismissing these concerns as racism. It's not, because I think we're a very, very tolerant bunch of people in Britain. But I think all of us, no matter what our origins, have a right to assume that anyone who chooses to come to this country really ought to respect the language of the place that they've chosen to live in, and learn that language as best as they possibly can, and also to fit in with the culture and values of that country, rather than expecting that they should be able to impose their own cultural values. I recently went to Calais to visit the jungle there to find out for myself about what was going on, and talk to some of those people who were trying to make that illegal crossing. And I have nothing against any of them personally, can I say. I mean, what they're doing is perfectly understandable, but I do think the government have got and are recognising the responsibility to tackle the problem. A lot of what I saw there is unlikely to be shown on the next episode of Songs of Praise when they go down there. And for a start, there was only a very small minority of people in the jungle that actually came from Syria. The vast majority, as far as I could tell, came from elsewhere, either from Iraq or from Pakistan or even from Iran, which is actually one of the most stable countries in the Middle East. No doubt some of them were fleeing instability and war. I have to say that Britain will never ever be able to cope with the numbers of people who live in countries which have some measure of instability. It's most of sub-Saharan Africa, virtually all of the Middle East, and a large chunk of Asia to boot. We simply aren't going to be able to cope with the vast numbers of people who could legitimately claim that they come from a country where there is a certain amount of instability. Another issue I had was that the vast majority of these people were young men. If they were all genuine refugees fleeing war, where were their wives? Where were their children? Why had they left them behind to face whatever it was they claimed to be facing? Others there were perfectly honest. One gentleman from Pakistan said to me quite openly, I'm coming here because it's easier to work in Britain to get cash in the hand. And he was making the gestures to say that, which is why the government are right to be doing something to tackle the problem. I was concerned at the fact that within the jungle in Calais, people are living in all sorts of different areas. The Iraqis in one area, the Pakistanis in another, other people somewhere else. And I was told by residents of the camp that the reason for that is that it's a very dangerous place after dark. There's a lot of tension there, and that sometimes violence results. And again, I have to say, with the best will in the world, if we try to do what Germany are doing and allow hundreds of thousands of people to come into this country from they themselves from widely different cultures, often perhaps from cultures which have been at war with each other, it is going to cause a major law and order problem. And the Germans are already finding that, where there have been outbreaks of violence between Turkish and Kurdish people. So I think we need to be honest about the problems that we're facing here. We also need to remember that many of those migrants themselves are making this dangerous journey because they're under the impression that once they've made it into Europe, they'll be allowed to stay and nobody will be able to chuck them out. And so they're risking their own lives. As well as causing problems for other people, they risk their own lives. Some figures suggest at least 1% are dying on that illegal journey, and they're often paying money over to human traffickers as well. One man told me, on film, by the way, on YouTube, I put it up there, he paid 18,000 euros to human traffickers to get him as far as Calais. So criminal gangs are making vast sums of money out of people's misery and exploitation. So I think the government are absolutely right to do something about the problem. I'm glad that some of the issues are being recognised by members of the party opposite, although I'm sorry that they're not willing to show their support for tougher migration controls by coming into the lobbies tonight. But I can reassure the government that not only will the vast majority, if not all Conservatives, support them, but the vast majority of people who vote for all sorts of different parties out there in the wider world will also be supporting what we're trying to do tonight.